Hi everyone! Welcome to Tangerine Planet, a place for kind thoughts, smart ideas, and a little sunshine for the world. Let's make a difference, one step at a time, together.
You know that feeling, that deep ache you get when you're really far away from a place you love, missing everything about it, that feeling of homesickness.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a core human thing, isn't it? That connection to place, to memory, comfort, identity even.
Right, feeling cut off from what's familiar, from that solace home gives you. We've probably all felt it. But here's a thought, and it feels increasingly important these days. What if you feel that same kind of pain, that same deep sense of loss, but you're actually still there?
Still in the place.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't gone anywhere. You're living in your house, your town, the landscape you call home. But the home itself, it's changing so fast, so drastically, that it feels like it's, dissolving right in front of you.
That's precisely the territory we're exploring in this deep dive. It's this really specific, powerful, and unfortunately, increasingly common kind of distress.
Yeah.
It feels like homesickness. You're right about that.
But it's different.
Critically different. Because like you said, you're not away. The pain comes from watching your home, your cherished landscape, fundamentally shift, degrade, maybe become totally unrecognizable.
And there's actually a word for this, isn't there? A word someone had to invent because nothing else quite fit.
That's right. The word is solastalgia.
Solastalgia. It sounds kind of academic, maybe, but it has a certain weight to it.
It does. It's meant to be descriptive, but also capture that feeling. It wasn't just dreamt up. It came directly from observing real people struggling with this experience, lacking the words for it.
Okay, let's really unpack this. For our deep dive today, we're relying heavily on a really insightful article by Pete Muller. And this piece, it doesn't just give us a definition. It takes us right back to the beginning, looks at historical echoes, and then shows us how this plays out today through some really powerful stories and research.
Yeah, so our mission really is to go beyond just the definition. Using Muller's article as our guide, we want to understand the specific conditions that birthed this word.
And see how it manifests, right? How different people, different cultures experience it when their homes change.
Exactly, and connect that personal feeling to the bigger picture, the global environmental shifts we're all seeing. And ultimately, try to grasp why understanding this specific emotion, why having a name for it, really matters right now.
Absolutely. We want to pull out the key insights, the surprising details, the stuff that really makes you think straight from the source, give you that shortcut to being genuinely informed. So where do we start? Where was this word actually born?
We need to go back to the early 2000s, and specifically to the Hunter Valley in New South Wales, Australia. That's the setting. And the key person is Glenn Albrecht.
Okay, Glenn Albrecht. He's an environmental studies professor.
That's right. And at that time, his research was focused on something pretty specific: the non-physical impacts of mining. The emotional, the psychological toll on communities living right next door to these huge operations.
And the Hunter Valley, it wasn't always about mining, was it? The article paints a different picture initially.
Not at all. It was known for, beautiful rolling hills, alfalfa fields, lots of horse farms, and increasingly vineyards too. Really quite idyllic agricultural.
But mining was there, just not like it became later.
Exactly. Coal mining had a long history, but it wasn't the defining feature everywhere. Then, in the early 2000s, things shifted. Global demand for coal surged, and new tech, especially open-cut mining, strip mining, essentially made huge operations more feasible.
Which are incredibly disruptive to the landscape.
Massively. So you suddenly had this wave of new, large-scale mines pushing aggressively into areas that were traditionally farms or residential.
And that's when people started calling Albrecht.
Yes. His office started getting calls from residents, people who were deeply distressed, hearing about his research, and wanting to share what was happening to them, what they were feeling.
And what were they describing? Not just, I don't like the mine, right? It was more visceral.
Much more. It was about their daily lives being fundamentally invaded. They talked about physical stuff, like actual earth-shaking explosions from blasting, rattling their homes, sometimes daily.
Wow.
And the constant noise. That low, inescapable rumble of heavy machinery, trucks, excavators running 247.
That sounds exhausting, and the visual side.
Yeah, that too. The article mentions this eerie industrial glow from massive work lights at night, where there used to be darkness, stars. Now this constant artificial light. It messes with your sense of peace, of night and day, even in your own house.
And the dust. I remember reading about the dust.
Oh, yeah. Invasive black coal dust.
Yeah.
Coating everything, not just outside, but getting inside their homes. On furniture, surfaces. Imagine constantly trying to clean, feeling like you're fighting this losing battle against the mind next door.
It sounds like their homes stopped feeling safe.
Absolutely. And beyond the mess, there were real health fears. Serious worries about the air they were breathing, especially for kids. Concerns about water contamination. These weren't just vague anxieties. They were tied directly to the visible changes, the dust they could see and touch.
So you have this picture of people feeling their security, their health, their peace just eroding, their home, the one place you should feel grounded, becoming a source of stress, even trauma, and feeling powerless.
Utterly powerless. That's a key piece the article emphasizes. Some people did fight back, legal challenges, zoning battles.
But it was complicated.
Very, because the local economy over time had become really dependent on those mining jobs. So you had neighbors, sometimes families, divided, some opposing the mines, others needing them for work.
That makes resistance incredibly difficult.
And ultimately, as the source puts it starkly, the deep-pocketed mining interests prevailed. The economic clout, the legal teams, individuals and small groups just couldn't match it. Their landscape, their community fabric. It became, in the article's words, collateral damage.
Collateral damage, that's a brutal term for people's homes and lives.
It is. And it was through listening to these raw emotional accounts, seeing this destruction and the powerlessness, that Albrecht started seeing this common theme in how people felt.
They knew what was upsetting them, the mine, the dust, the noise, but they couldn't quite name the feeling itself.
Exactly. It wasn't just anger or just sadness or just fear. It was a mix. And many people described it using comparisons to being away, to loss. Albrecht noted they felt as though they were experiencing something akin to homesickness.
Like longing for the place it used to be, even while standing right there.
That was the crucial insight. As Albrecht said, none of them had left home. They weren't exiles or refugees in the traditional sense. They were physically present, but the emotional and sensory landscape of home was changing so radically, it felt alien.
And that's what sparked the idea for the word.
Yes. Albrecht figured the physical decay of the valley, that shift from green fields to gray pits, was literally undermining the solace people got from that place.
The comfort, the peace. The very things that make a place feel like home.
Right. The place that should provide solace was becoming a source of pain. So he needed a word for that specific pain, the pain tied to losing environmental solace while still in place.
And he combined Latin and Greek.
That's it. Solacium, Latin for solace, comfort, and algia, the Greek suffix for pain or ache.
Solacium, solastalgia.
Solastalgia. And his definition really nails it. The pain of losing the solace of home. It captures that specific grief, distress, disorientation. When your place changes so much, it stops feeling like home, even though you haven't moved.
It really underscores how vital language is, that he felt he had to create a word for this real distinct feeling people were experiencing.
Absolutely. And this word, born from those specific Hunter Valley circumstances, it didn't stay local for long.
Yeah, the author of the article, Pete Muller, he describes hearing it himself, right? But not where you might expect.
Exactly. He wasn't at an environmental conference or reading about mining. He heard solastalgia watching a film about drought. He said it struck him as odd, unfamiliar. He even scribbled it down, wasn't sure how to spell it.
That's interesting. Hearing it in a different context, drought, suggests the feeling isn't just about mining.
It hints that the concept had broader applicability, that the feeling could arise from different kinds of environmental disruption.
So naturally, he Googled it.
Of course. And what he found, it clearly surprised him. The article mentions tens of thousands of related hits. This wasn't some obscure academic term anymore.
It had spread. He found academic papers, conferences, sure.
Right, confirming it had traction in research circles, but also news stories from all over, showing communities and journalists were picking it up, using it to describe diverse situations.
And the arts connection is fascinating, too.
Definitely. Muller points out how solastalgia had seeped into creative work, a sign that a concept is really hitting a deeper cultural nerve.
What were the examples? Something in sculpture.
Yeah, a sculpture exhibition in New Jersey exploring environmental change. A pop album in Australia, using the word. Even a classical concerto in Estonia. All directly inspired by Albrecht's word and the feeling behind it.
Wow. That shows it resonates emotionally, not just intellectually. Artists are tapping into that feeling.
For sure. And it was looking through all these different results, academic, news, art, that Muller had this kind of aha moment. He felt solastalgia marked a new frontier in how we talk about our relationship with the environment.
A new frontier? How so?
It felt like a shift beyond just listing environmental problems. It was naming this complex, strange brew of emotions, as he puts it, that seemed to be bubbling up more and more as familiar places started feeling.
Yeah.
Well, unstable, unrecognizable.
We know humans are changing the planet. That's not new. But solastalgia shifts the focus.
Exactly. It highlights how those changes are changing us. It's about the internal impact, psychological, emotional, of watching the environment degrade. It's not just happening out there, it's affecting us in here, messing with our sense of security, belonging, right in the places we felt safest.
Which brings us back to Albrecht again, and why he felt creating the word was so necessary.
Yeah, when Muller visited him, Albrecht really hammered this point about language. He said, quite forcefully, if the language is not rich enough to enable us to describe and understand these things properly, well, we bloody well have to create it.
We bloody well have to create it. That's quite a statement. It suggests without the word, the experience itself might be dismissed or misunderstood.
Right. And he asked this really thought-provoking question about history. Why don't we have a single word that corresponds to a human feeling? Especially one he felt was profound, obvious, felt worldwide, and has likely been felt for thousands of years in similar circumstances.
That's fascinating. He thinks this feeling isn't entirely new, even though the word is.
He suggests the underlying experience, deep distress from environmental loss, might have ancient roots. The article encourages us to think historically.
Like natural disasters throughout history, floods, volcanoes. Those must have caused similar feelings when they destroyed familiar places.
Certainly. The article mentions floods, wildfires, earthquakes, volcanoes, but also human actions expanding empires, conquering armies, radically reshaping landscapes, clearing forests, building cities. Surely those massive shifts caused deep distress tied to place.
Their article gives the example of Native Americans during European colonization, right? That seems like a very direct parallel.
A powerful one. Their entire culture, spirituality, way of life was bound to the land. As colonists cleared forests, killed buffalo, dammed rivers, their world was literally being destroyed before their eyes.
And there's that quote from Setanta, the Kiowa leader.
Yes, incredibly poignant. He says, "This land belonged to our fathers. But when I go up to the Arkansas River, I see camps of soldiers. These soldiers cut down my timber, they kill my buffalo, and when I see that, my heart feels like bursting."
My heart feels like bursting. That's raw grief tied directly to seeing the land destroyed. It sounds so much like what Albrecht heard in the Hunter Valley.
It really does. It's ecological grief.
Yeah.
Centuries before the term. The article then connects this to the Industrial Revolution, another period of massive, rapid landscape change.
Cities exploding, railroads, factories, transforming everything.
And impacting people emotionally. The source uses Thomas Cole, the Hudson River School painter, as an example. He loved the natural beauty of the Hudson Valley.
And he watched it being cleared.
Aggressively cleared for farming and industry, like tanneries that needed huge amounts of tree bark.
Yeah.
Cole felt real sorrow seeing it happen.
There's a quote from him, too.
Yes, lamenting the destruction. He wrote, "I cannot but express my sorrow that the beauty of such landscapes is quickly passing away. The ravages of the axe are daily increasing. The most noble scenes are made desolate." He even calls it barbaric.
So again, someone articulating deep pain linked to landscape destruction. It seems Albrecht was right. The feeling has historical echoes, even if the word solastalgia is modern and maybe captures something specific about our current scale of change.
Exactly. Which brings us to the modern faces of solastalgia, the diverse ways it shows up now, amplified by today's global changes.
The author even shares a personal example involving his mother, a bit different from the Hunter Valley mining scenario.
Yeah, a bit milder maybe, but
Yeah.
shows the range. His mother grew up on Long Beach Island, off the New Jersey coast, a place she deeply connected with, where she fell in love with biology, the sea, the marshes.
Her formative place.
Totally. But starting in the 50s, development pressure ramped up, vacation homes filling wetlands. The island started changing fast.
And how did she react?
Immediately, viscerally. The article says she sensed immediately what was happening, was furious, and even tried these small acts of protest, like pulling up surveyor stakes.
A symbolic gesture. But it wasn't just anger.
No, the author describes it as more complex. A mix of fear, powerlessness, anxiety, and sorrow. Fear for the ecosystem, powerlessness against development, anxiety about what was being lost. sorrow for the changing character of her home.
That sounds very much like the strange brew of emotions linked to solastalgia.
It does. And despite her feelings, the building went on. Decades later, the article notes, the wild past was only visible in things like osprey nests built on top of electrical poles, powering the houses that replaced the wilderness.
Wow, that's a stark image, nature adapting to the remnants. But the article also gives examples of much more acute, dramatic solastalgia happening right now globally.
Absolutely. It takes us to Lorino in the Russian Arctic. There's a quote from Alexei Otoy, a hunter.
What does he say?
He says, "We can't grow vegetables. We can only live off what the sea gives us." That's a huge shift. Climate change has presumably made traditional farming impossible.
So their whole way of life is threatened.
And incredibly uncertain. He adds, our ancestors have observed periods of warming and cooling. It's hard for us to know what is really happening. That uncertainty, when the patterns you rely on disappear, is deeply unsettling. It shakes your foundation.
Then there's Paradise, California, after the wildfire.
A devastating example. The quote from Kayla Cox, a homemaker, is just heartbreakingly direct about the disorientation.
What did she say?
If you go look at a map, you'll find paradise. But everything about it is different. You feel lost in your own town. And that's a very difficult thing to process.
Lost in your own town. That captures it perfectly. You're physically there, but home is gone. It's the essence of solastalgia in an extreme form.
And one more example from the Andes in Peru near a melting glacier.
The Colquipunca Glacier.
Right. And a local dancer, Clark Asto, connects the melting ice to something fundamental.
What's his perspective?
He says, it's a real feeling of concern because we are water, right? Human beings, we are water. That the glaciers are finishing is telling us that we will also finish in some way.
That's profound. Linking the glacier's fate directly to human existence, to identity. The grief isn't just for ice, it's for a life source, a part of themselves.
These stories, the Arctic hunter, the Californian survivor, the Andean dancer, they show how solastalgia manifests across different cultures and environments, climate impacts, fire, melting ice. But the core pain, watching your place unravel, is the same.
And the article stresses, while change isn't new, the current situation is different.
Critically different. The scale and pace of change in the 21st century are unprecedented. This isn't just local or slow anymore.
It's global, rapid, and overwhelmingly human-driven.
Right. Nearly 8 billion people. We're raising forests, pumping out carbon, flooding ecosystems with chemicals and plastics at rates never seen before.
And the consequences are everywhere now. The article lists them. Ruinous heat waves, wildfire storm surges, melting glaciers, rising seas, ecological destruction on a massive scale.
And while we focus a lot on the political, financial, logistical fallout, the article insists we can't ignore the often overlooked emotional challenges.
The mental health impact.
Exactly. Which scientists are only recently really starting to study systematically how changing the environment affects our mental well-being.
The article mentions a big study, MIT and Harvard.
Yeah, the biggest empirical study to date, apparently. Looked at nearly 2 million Americans over 10 years, tracking climate change exposure and mental health outcomes.
A huge sample size. What did they find?
Clear links. Exposure to things like heat waves and drought. It magnified the risk of suicide and raised the number of psychiatric hospital visits.
Wow. And for people hit by disasters like hurricanes.
They were more likely to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder and depression.
So this isn't just feeling sad about trees. There are measurable, serious mental health consequences linked to environmental damage and disruption. Solastalgia has clinical weight.
It absolutely does. The pain is real and it takes a toll. And the article highlights how incredibly hard it can be for people experiencing this landscape loss to even express that pain.
It gives the example of Ile de Jean-Charles in Louisiana, the island that's disappearing.
Right. An island that's lost 98% of its land since 1955, just dissolving into the sea due to subsidence and sea level rise. Generations lived there, hunted, farmed on land that's now underwater.
People like Chantal Comardel, whose parents lived that way.
Exactly. Now the community's fractured, many forced to leave, climate refugees essentially, their home, their history, vanishing.
And Comardel talks about the pain, saying it's different.
Yes, her words are so insightful. She says the pain of losing a land is totally different than any other pain because it is difficult to share.
Why difficult to share?
Because, as she explains, it's not like losing a loved one or something that other people easily understand. We have social scripts for grieving people. Grief for a place, especially one lost to complex environmental change. Much harder for others to grasp if they haven't felt it.
There's another quote, too, from a fisherman there, Vauchan Dardar.
Oh, yeah, just gut-wrenching. He says, it's like all the trees are dead now. I wanted to live down here, but I realize it's not possible. It's a hurt to your soul. It's feeling like I lost a loved one.
A hurt to your soul, like I lost a loved one. That really drives home the depth of connection, how losing a place can feel like bereavement.
It underscores why this isn't just nostalgia or sadness. It's profound grief. But the article finds a glimmer of hope here, a silver lining in our current era.
Which is?
That because these changes are becoming more global, more people do understand now. The shared experience of solastalgia is growing, and that creates potential for connection, for solidarity.
Like what Camardel and others from Ile de Jean Charles did, reaching out.
Exactly. They connected with other communities facing similar land loss, even if the causes were different.
They connected with a village in Alaska, Newtok.
That's right. A Yupik village also dealing with subsidence, melting permafrost, erosion, vastly different places, cultures, but facing the same fundamental threat of losing their homeland.
And they found common ground.
Deep common ground. Camardel said we were able to sit down and talk, and it was almost exactly the same feelings, the same emotions, sharing those unique burdens with others who truly got it.
That must have been incredibly validating.
Hugely. Camardel reflected. It was like, okay, so I'm not alone. This isn't just something that I'm making up in my mind. It was real.
That validation is crucial, isn't it? Knowing your pain isn't imagined, it's a shared human response to devastating circumstances. It makes it less isolating.
Precisely. It shifts it from feeling like an individual problem to recognizing it as a collective experience born from shared environmental threats. And maybe those connections can foster support, shared learning, perhaps even action.
So what about the word itself? Solastalgia, where does it stand now?
The article says it's buzzing at the edges of language, mostly in English for now, but it clearly resonates.
And Albrecht, the man who coined it, what does he hope for its future?
It's fascinating, almost paradoxical. He told the author he hopes it stays at the edges. He doesn't want it to become common.
Why not?
Because, as he puts it, it's a word that shouldn't exist but had to be created out of difficult circumstances.
It exists because things are going wrong, because the solace of home is being destroyed.
Exactly. It's a symptom of environmental distress, of human suffering caused by unwelcome change. Its very existence is a negative indicator.
Okay, I see.
And while he recognizes the feeling, the reality it describes has now become global because the forces creating it are global. His ultimate wish is really powerful.
What does he wish?
He says, bluntly, that's terrible. Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the circumstances, the forces that create solastalgia.
Wow. So his hope isn't for the word's fame, but for its obsolescence. He wants to eliminate the need for the word by fixing the problems causing the pain.
Precisely. It's a profound call to action embedded in the word itself. Don't just name the pain. Address its root causes, the environmental destruction, the power dynamics, the development models that lead to this loss of solace.
So to kind of wrap up our deep dive, we started in the Hunter Valley, hearing those initial accounts of distress that led Albrecht to coin solastalgia.
Then we saw how the concept took root and spread, finding echoes in art, news, research globally, marking this shift in understanding the human cost of environmental change.
We touched on those historical parallels, the pain felt by people like Setanta or Thomas Cole witnessing landscape destruction centuries ago.
And we grounded it firmly in today's reality with those powerful stories from Russia, California, Peru, Louisiana, showing the acute, diverse ways solastalgia manifests now, backed by research on its real mental health impacts.
We explored how hard it is to share this pain, but also the validation found in connecting with others going through the same thing, like the Ile de Jean Charles and Newtok communities.
Yeah. Ultimately, solastalgia isn't just some interesting term. It's a name for a real, deeply felt, and sadly growing emotional reality for people worldwide facing environmental upheaval. It's a specific kind of grief we need to acknowledge.
Which brings us back to Albrecht's wish. Get rid of the circumstances that create solastalgia.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? If this feeling is becoming more common, if the pain of losing the solace of home is a direct result of how we're treating the planet,
then how might fully recognizing and validating that specific emotional pain change how we act? How might it influence our approach to environmental protection, to development, to how we care for the places we call home collectively?
maybe truly understanding the depth of solastalgia isn't just about empathy. Maybe it's essential for motivating the kind of change Albrecht wished for, addressing the forces that caused the pain in the first place.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into solastalgia.
Thanks for being with us today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tap the bell to keep the good vibes going. Let's join into healing our little world one step at a time, together. And all this is Tangerine Planet. Until next time.